We continue with our class Halachot and Brachot. Today's class number 21. And we start with Sefer Chofetz Chaim. Sefer Chofetz Chaim. So it says the big topic is the same. Tell us constructive listening. And today's topic is soliciting information preconditions. It is forbidden to cause another Jew to transgress, as it is forbidden to cause another Jew to transgress. One may not solicit information unless it is clearly permissible for the other person to offer such an information. Thus, in order to solicit information, the following conditions must be met. Okay, so let's see. Number one, a person from whom information is being solicited. So condition number one, a person from whom the information is being sought is known to fabricate stories about others, to read into their behavior. Is unjust manner, or to draw hurried conclusion about their character. And so let's read it again. It's very interesting. A person from whom information is being sought is not known to fabricate the story. So if you ask somebody, so you have to make sure that it's an honest person. No, not even honest. There's some people that just like to make up stuff for no reason. So make sure first he's not going to fabricate these stories about the others. I don't know why he would do it, but I mean, there are people like that. To read into their behavior is an unjust manner, right? Or to draw a hurried conclusion about their characters. Or if a person gives you like the whole analysis, you never ask this person about this. You ask one specific question, they give you the whole ganze Meise, right? Big story about this about the subject of your question. Okay. Number two, the person is not known to exaggerate in his description of the events. So when he says every time, like it was only one time or two times, why do you say every time, right? So these people you cannot ask, because like how will you know when he's saying the truth and when he's exaggerating? Continue. Number three, it can be assumed that when informed that information is necessary, he will not speak out the malice toward the subject. So just because we ask about him information, he's not going to talk about it like, oh, this people is asking about you, probably this, and this. Okay. Thus, one may not seek information from a person who is not in good terms with the subject. It's a I mean, this condition is everywhere. So we're not allowed to talk about. So if they ask me a reference about this guy, and I know that I cannot stand him for whatever reason, so I cannot give this information. Right. Number four, it is clear that the information is necessary for constructive purpose. So he should know, not this guy, and that there is no alternative to solicit such information. Basically, if there is no other way for me but to ask this person. Okay, so we stop here. Very nice. We continue with this topic. Continue Shulchan Aruch. Is a commentary of Mishnah Brura. We're on Simon 168. And the topic is the same topic, over which bread to make the blessing. Okay. So when they ask you about angels, or Gog and Magog, you ask him question. Ask him Another question: do you know or over which bread to make blessing? Right? I mean, it's an innocent question, but we spend so much time, and we may be only in the middle of the scene. Right? So forget about angels, leave the angels alone. Try to concentrate on issue on hand. You eat bread, you need to know on which bread to make what blessing. And what is bread, what is not bread. Okay, so we stop in the middle of Sif number 10. So let me read from the beginning, and then we're going to comment from the place where we left off. From the beginning, number 10. The rule with respect to crumb balls, right? So from crumbs made. There is bits of bread stuck together by the means of broth, etc. is as follows. So it was the bread was crumbed, right? And then they stuck it together. If the individual bits were boiled, then if they are large as olive, right, one must make over them the blessing of hamotze. If they're as large as olive, it makes hamotze. So it's real bread. Okay, hamotze, and the blessing after the meal, meaning birchas hamazon. Even if they do not have the appearance of the bread, but since, as we said last time, so because of the size. Okay. However, if they are not as large as olive, then even though they seem to have appearance of bread, one must not make over them the blessing of hamotze. Okay. And the blessing after the meal. So we said with pieces, if the pieces of the bread is large enough, it doesn't matter how they, right? Okay. But the blessing, so if it's for smaller ones, and the single blessing which corresponds to 3 blessings for after the meal. Okay, so that's it. That's what we said. I commented up to here last time. So let me see how long is the halacha. Okay, actually this is it. So I'm going to finish the halacha and we go into details. So it says the individual bits of bread were not, if the individual bits of bread were not boiled, but adjoined to each other by the means of honey or broth, so and they stick very good, right? Then, if the bits are as large as the olive, one should make the blessing hamotze over them, even if they do not have appearance of the bread. Okay, so if they pieces of bread, they're not boiled, right? We stick these pieces together. If it's if it's bigger than, if they're bigger than olive size, which we say it's kazais, it's 28 grams. So we say hamotze. Okay. However, if they are not as large as the olive, then if they have the appearance of the bread, if it is evident that and obvious that they are bread, one must make over them the blessing of hamotze. So we said even if these pieces appear as a bread, a few crumbs, so you have hamotze on them. You say hamotze on them, right? And the blessing after the meal, meaning birchas hamazon. After, but if they do not have the appearance of the bread, one must make over them the blessing and single blessing which corresponds to the 3 blessings or after the meal. If the bits of bread were neither boiled nor joined together, but are merely bread, crumbled into tiny bits, then although the pieces are not as large as the olive and do not have the appearance of the bread, one must nevertheless make over them blessing of hamotze, as we said, and the blessing for the meal. Okay, so let's do this piece, this paragraph. This is Mishnah Brura. Let's see what he says. So one more time, and we're going to explain. If individual bits of bread were not boiled, but joined to each other, but the means of honey or broth. So I guess when you add honey, so I mean, maybe they don't look as much as bread any longer. Okay, that's the reason. If they look as pieces of bread, it's always hamotz, right? So no bread. Okay, so not boiled, but join the individual pieces with honey or broth. Okay, then if the beets are large as an olive, one should make the blessing hamotzi over them and birchas hamazon. Commentary. There is, even if one of them is large as olive, as explained previously. So I mean that's enough. You just start eating from that big one. That's it. If one is if one piece, that piece, it's after the sticking the smaller pieces together with let's say with the honey, right? That's and this piece is olive size, so 28 grams. So okay, you can say how much. However, if they are not as large as olive, so smaller pieces, then if they have appearance of the bread, there is if it is evident that and obvious that they are bread, one must make over them the blessing of hamotzi and the birchas hamazon. Okay, so one more time. But if they are not as large as olive, then 59 commentary Mishnah Berurah. The reason why these bits of bread are superior in this respect to the bits of bread smaller than olive of the first case discussed in this paragraph is that in a view of the fact that they are not boiled, their bread appearance is of consequence, since it is most evident and obvious. So as we said before, it's, when you boil, that's one story, but here it was not boiled. It was just crumbled in pieces and then like reconstructed into bread or whatever shape or form. Okay, when the author of the Shulchan Aruch writes that one must make the blessing for after the meal over them, he means that one must do so if he ate several bits which were collectively the size of the olive. Okay, so that's like obvious, I think. But I had to say that it's not because of the one piece, but because of all of the pieces combined. That must be at least kizais. If one crumble bread until it made it into the fine flour, interesting, into fine flour again, and then mix it again with the fat, etc., with which is how one make what called knedelach, boiled flour balls, like a matzah ball, something like that, or it's in English spelling, chrenzelech, fried flour cakes. In our language, there's Yiddish. See what Maggid Abraham writes about it. So basically, they take bread. I guess dry bread. I mean, they dry it first. How they can make like a flour and then like stick it together. That's how I guess, right? However, many achranim, right, and then reconstitute and make balls and put these balls into the soup. However, many achranim are agreed that if one boiled this mixture in a pot, or fried it in a liquid in a pan, right? So fried in a liquid in a pan, we said it's still cooking, which is likewise regarded as boiling. Exactly, when it covers, mostly covers, right? One should merely make the blessing over it, even if each cooked piece is large as olive or more, and even if he intends to eat many pieces. This is the fact of the universal custom. And the other hand, before we go to the other hand, so basically if he makes into flour, right, bread back into flour, finely minimize it, right, grind it somehow, right, and then he reconsider and make balls, right, with fat, with oil, I don't know, whatever they add to these balls, and they cook. So it's 100% misogynist. It's like we have pasta, right? We have spaghetti, all of these things that it's also made of flour, and the only way that they eat it is they're going to boil it. So same here, boil meaning cooking. Same is here. They do it for cooking. So it's misogynist. Even if it's huge, it does not make any difference. Okay. In other cases where you say still on a cooked pieces, large piece of bread, you say chamotzi if it looks like bread, but here it does not look like bread. That's the difference. So commentary continue with Mishnah Berurah. On the other hand, if one bakes the pieces, it is proper to eat them in the middle of the meal only, unless they have kneaded mostly with fat or honey. In which case it is clear that one must take blessed zoynus over them, as may be seen from what it is stated above in gloss to paragraph 7. If one kneaded them with water only and then bake them, they are ruled as proper bread. So okay, so let's try to understand this. That's a different situation. What Mishnah Berurah says. So if he after he stick these pieces together, right, with and then he baked it. So Mishnah Berurah said it's not so clear what the blessing to make over it. If he did it with water, right? But if he did it with fat or honey, so we said all of these liquids, so which is, I mean, the liquids, but it's not water, so it's not chamotzi, basically, right? So we say baremi nemi zoynus. Okay. But if he cooked it and then baked it, right? Like they do with bagels. So in this case, it's chamotzi. So because the last stage of the preparation was baking. So it was 59. Let's read the whole sentence. However, if they are not as large as olive, then if they have the appearance of bread, it's evident that and obvious that they are bread. One must make over them the blessing of chamotzi and the blessing for after a meal. But if they do not have the appearance of the bread, one must make over them the blessing baremi nemi zoynus. So if it does not look like bread, baremi nemi zoynus, and the single blessing which corresponds to the 3 blessings after the meal. So that's a blessing alamihia, right? Okay. Continue. If bits of bread were neither boiled nor joined together, so nor boiled nor joined together. So okay, so just pieces of bread. But merely bread crumbled into very tiny bits, then although the pieces are not large as olive and do not have the appearance of the bread, I mean just tiny pieces, right? They not the appearance of the bread. One must nevertheless make over them the blessing of chamotzi. Okay. So sometimes that's I give you a situation. So sometimes you have you finish your meal and you said birchas hamazon, and now in your plate you see some crumbs or whatever on the plate where the bread was. So you cannot just eat them. You cannot just eat these crumbs. You have to go wash your hands and say chamotzi, right? Of course, you wash without the blessing, but okay. Say hamotzi. Okay. Continue. Actually, no. One side. There is one Mishnah Brura. So he comments on and do not have appearance of bread. There is, in the view of the fact that the bread is crumbled into bits which is as fine, so it's very tiny pieces, as fine, as sifted flour. Not sure how. I mean, it's sifted flour. It's like a grind. It's like, how can you crumble the bread? I'm not sure. It does not have a recognizable appearance of the bread. Maybe with some kind of grinder. I mean, it's not the crumbs that we think about. The reason why the beets are nevertheless regarded as bread is that they are individual beets of bread and not joined together, and consequently they never forfeited their classification of bread. That's very interesting. So all of these cases before, we say that these individual pieces were joined together and boiled, right? Or first it was boiled and then joined together with this liquid, without liquid, this and that. But here we say we just crumble, right? Even though they're tiny pieces, it was bread initially, and we crumble into tiny pieces, still bread, because we didn't do any other changes. It's a very interesting idea. So meaning the status of the bread did not change. Size did, but not the status. See the Achronim, who write that even if one soaks these beads of bread in water, they will nevertheless not have created, not have ceased the classification of bread, since they are not joined together. So if he puts these pieces into the water, according to these authorities, since they're not joined together, they're still bread. Okay. Continue. However, this only applies if one soaked the beads of bread for a short while. But if the beads remain in the water until it becomes white, so water became white, as we learned before, because of them, it is explained that explained in the succeeding paragraph that one must then make over them the blessing, and the blessing which corresponds to the three blessings of the meal. Okay, meaning that it's no longer bread. It's like I maybe absorbed too much water. That's the thing. Okay, so we finished with this halacha, with that halacha. It's very long but very interesting. So next one is 11. So it says there is an authority who states that if bits of bread were placed in the water and the water went white because of the bits, they will have lost the appearance of the bread. Consequently, one should merely make over them blessing, and the single blessing corresponds to the three blessings after the meal. Okay. So let's do it from the beginning with commentaries. So it says, there is an authority who states that the bits of bread were placed in the water. Commentary. There is the bits of bread that are not as large as olive. Since if they are as large as olive, there is no need for them to have the appearance of bread, as stated in the previous paragraph. Okay, that's clear. So if it's more than olive, more than this 28 grams, so there is even if they in the water, even if the water became white from this flour in the bread, does not make any difference, still bread. Okay. So let's do from the beginning this sentence. There is authority who state that if the bits of bread were placed, so when they said it's smaller than kizayis, were placed in the water, and the water went white because of the bits, commentary, they placed in the water. This rule also applies when one puts a piece of bread that is not as large as olive, and which one dried over the coals. 1 second. This rule also applies to when one puts a piece of bread that is not as large as an olive, and which one dried over the coals, called pennies, okay, in beer. So he put this this piece of bread dried over the coals in beer, okay. If the beer went white because it was soaked in it, one must therefore make the blessing over the pennies. Okay, so basically it was a dry piece of bread. He put this, he sticked it in a beer. So if beer turned white, so it's indication, so it's actually mizonos. Okay. However, if one only added few fine bits of bread to the beer in order to give the taste to the beer, and not because he wishes to eat bread, he should make the blessing shechakol over the beer only, and no blessing over the bread. So in such a case, the beer is a principal article, and the bread is not. And the bread is not a substantial or important element in it. So very interesting. We actually learned it in our first classes about primary and subordinate. So, I mean, today we have different beer. So it's hard, at least for me, to comprehend why do you need to put piece of bread into the beer to change the taste, how it is going to taste. And I never tried it, but it's very interesting. So, but that's the fact, right? So they say if they put smaller pieces into beer, and the beer be turned to white, right, from this bread. So you say Barim in the Second scenario, as Mishnah Brura explained, they just put a small few crumbs, like in insignificant amount in the beer, only for the taste, to affect the taste. Okay, that's what it says. So in this case, this bread is subordinate, as we said also in another book. It could be subordinate, so it's only to improve the beer. So you say shechakol, and this shechakol blessing actually covers the bread too. Okay, so one more commentary on the same sentence. So the whole sentence from the beginning. There is an authority who states that if the bits of bread were placed in water and water went white because of the bits, they will have lost their appearance. Okay. So commentary is saying, okay, they have lost the appearance. They will have lost, etc. He stated this, although it is explained in the end of the previous paragraph that the bits of bread were not boiled or joined together with liquid. One should make the blessing hamotzi, right? We say even on the tiny bits over them, even if they do not have appearance of the bread. So we say he grind very well. And even if they were soaked in water, as we have written in a subparagraph 60. So in subparagraph 60 that we read not so long ago, we said because the status of these crumbs never changed towards bread, they didn't combine them together or did some or boil. They just put it in water, so it's still bread. Bread is bread. For the above ruling only applies to the circumstances described there, where the actual form of the bread did not change at all, since the bits of the bread were merely soaked in water for the short while. So we said there is a second condition, time period, short while. And the fact that an appearance of the bread did not evident, appearance of the bread is not evident in the bits, right? So I mean that they don't look like bread, is merely due to their minuteness. It's not like they do not look like bread. They do look like bread, but we cannot see it because they're the tiny pieces. So maybe if we take magnifying glass, we'll see that it's actually they look like bread. In this paragraph, however, the circumstances are different. Since the bits of the breads that were soaked for a long time, that's the issue, right? For a long time in water, until the water went white through it. And this is the indication that the bread's original form has been impaired because of the soaking. And it has therefore forfeit the classification of bread. So now it was a bread before, but after soaking for a long time, it lost this status of bread. Which makes sense. For 63, continue. Consequently, one should merely make over them the blessing, Boreh, the name is honest, and the single blessing corresponds to the 3 blessings after the meal. Okay, so it was very short sieve. Okay, next one, number 12. There is an authority who says that if bread was soaked in a red wine, interesting. One should merely make the blessing, Boreh name is honest, and the single blessing which corresponds to the 3 blessings for after the meal. Very interesting. However, it seems reasonable to assume that what he says only refers to the bits or pieces of bread which are each not as large as olive. Okay, so it's very interesting. So let's see what is going on. So we're doing the number 12 from the beginning, this commentaries with Mishnah. So I said there is an authority who says that the bread was soaked, if the bread was soaked in a red wine. Let's see first Mishnah Brura in red wine. What's the difference? This rule applies solely if the wine is red. Interesting. For in a view of the fact that the bread is rendered by the wine, it loses the appearance of the bread. Redden. I'm sorry, I apologize. I misread it. One more time from the beginning. Sorry, I misread one word. This rule applies solely if the wine is red. For in the view of the fact that bread was reddened, make the bread red by the wine, it loses the appearance of the bread. So I mean, in a clear water, it's one thing, but in a wine, okay, it's a different thing. Continue. If one soaked bread in white wine, however, we require the appearance of the wine to have changed. So something have to change to see whether to understand that something was changed, whether the bread changed or the water changed. Something changed, right? If one soaked the bread in white wine, however, we require that the appearance of the wine to have changed because of the bread, which was soaked in it, and only then will the bread have ceased to be classed as bread. Okay. Meaning, if first case with a red wine, we said the wine affected bread. Now, in the case of the white wine, so bread affected wine. Right, as stated above in paragraph 11, with respect to the bread which was soaked in water. Okay, so I mean, water and white wine, there is no difference basically in this case. Okay, so let's read the whole sentence again. Okay, so it says that there is authority who says that if bread was soaked in a red wine, one should merely make over it the blessing Boreh name is honest. 65. Merely. Boreh name is honest. The Shulchan Aruch means by this expression to rule out once making blessing hamotzi over such a bread. Okay. As to whether or not it is necessary to make the blessing for wine, if one principal purpose is to eat the bread, okay, and the wine is only intended to make the bread tastier to eat, then the wine becomes secondary to bread, and one should not make the blessing Borei Minei Mizonos. One should only make the blessing Borei Minei Mizonos over the bread. So, as we said before, wine is very important product, right? And bread, even in bread milk, wine is not covered. So if you have a dinner and you want a little wine, so there is no problem. You just make a separate blessing. Even though you did the blessing on on a bread and all beverages that you're going to that you usually drink during the meal that covered, except wine. So wine is special product. Here they say a little different. So we soak this piece of bread in wine, right? And wine got absorbed into the bread. So then now it looks like that it's only one product, right? That they got combined. So Mishnah Berurah says you have to say only Borei Minei Mizonos on this bread because it changed also. It's not bread. It's bread the soft. Just 1 second. Okay, so in this case, as we said, that it's a bread soaked in wine, and we say Borei Minei Mizonos, right? Because it is not bread. Similarly, it's one soaked a cake or biscuit in wine or brandy. The same ruling also applies. First of all, we don't see the liquid. That's also very important. This reasoning is all the more applicable to if one soak the bits of bread. So it's not like big piece, but okay. But now we're going to bits that are as large as olive in red wine, or if one soak the bread in a white wine, in which case one must even make the blessing hamotzi of the pieces that are not as large. 1 second, as the olive. So let's try to understand what Mishnah Berurah. I mean, he in one commentary he gives us several scenarios. So it's not don't think what he said it contradicts. It's separate scenarios. Now, let's read this scenario from the beginning and we explain. The first scenario was when wine absorbed in a bread. So and he wants to eat bread. So you don't make a blessing or a separate blessing on the wine, right? Or for that matter, on any product. So some people, they like to eat donuts and dip them into coffee, right? And they like this coffee to be absorbed in a donut, and that's how we eat. So it's not clear. There are some opinions, right? There's some opinions that say that you have to make 2 separate blessings since you're going to drink coffee anyway, right? I mean, donut is not going to absorb all of the coffee in your cup, right? So they say to be on a safe side, you say you eat a little bit of donut without coffee. Say the blessing, Borei Minei Mizonos, then eat a little piece, whatever piece you want to eat. Then you say blessing on the coffee, and then you can combine. You can dip your donut in the coffee. There is no problem. But preferably not to do it like as we just said with the bread, right? Because bread, as we said, the blessing downgraded because of this wine absorbed, right? And it became Borei Minei Mizonos. Okay, so that was the first scenario. So now we're going to the second scenario. Similarly, if one soaked the cake or biscuit in wine or brandy, the same ruling applies. Okay, so that's actually the first scenario. Continue. This reasoning is all the more applicable if one soaks bits of bread that are as large as olive, right? So you got this wine absorbed in them, or What are some other liquids? Just a large one in red wine, or he soaked the bread in a white wine, in which case one must even make the blessing hamotzi over the pieces that are not as large as olive, as stated above. So basically, just to remind us what we stated above. So in case of the red wine, the appearance of the bread changed. In case of the white wine, it did not change. It's white wine looks like water. Looks like, right? Water, so appearance did not change. We did not boil this bread. We did not do anything to this bread. So even the pieces are less than kizayis, they still have a status of bread. In this case, continue. In these cases, the wine definitely becomes secondary to the bread. Okay, so meaning because it was absorbed. However, if one's purpose is also to sip the wine, and one wishes to eat and drink simultaneously, it is then proper to make blessing over some of the wine. So commentaries say, for if one makes the blessing over the soaked bread, one can no longer make the blessing over the wine, since it is secondary to the bread, even when one's purpose is also to sip the wine. So okay. So what we're trying to say here, it's very interesting. So on one hand, this wine is absorbed into the bread, but as we said with this coffee, not maybe he likes this wine also, not only that he is trying to improve the bread with this wine, but maybe he likes the wine also separately. So they recommend exactly as you said, make a blessing over the wine, and then make the blessing over the bread, and that's it. Because he likes wine also. That's the explanation. Continue. If one's purpose in eating the soaked bread is only to sip the wine absorbed by the bread, interesting, and the bread is only meant to make the wine tastier to drink, the bread becomes secondary to the wine, and one must make only bareplia gefen. So it's very interesting. So people, it's like a little shocking for people who do not know, right? So he only wants to suck the wine from this piece of bread, right? He interested in wine, not in bread, and the bread is like a mechanism, right? To get the wine to his mouth. So in this case, the bread is irrelevant. Even for sure, he's going to eat little pieces that would disconnect from the bread. But since it's secondary, his main purpose is wine. So Bareplicha Geffen on the wine covers the bread also. Continue. Now I guess it's a new scenario, new case, right? Now, according to this, we can determine the ruling which applies with respect to our practice when we drink coffee and dip in cake, or biscuit in a coffee. Okay, so that's the case that we discussed. Many people do that. Then we clearly also have in mind both to sip the coffee and eat the cake or a biscuit. Right? It therefore seems proper that when one drinks coffee in this way, he should also make the blessing shechakol over the coffee and drink some of it, right? Before he makes the blessing over the cake or a biscuit. So first he makes on a coffee, and then he makes on a biscuit. Just 1 second, before he makes the blessing over the cake and the biscuit. The question is why he cannot do it in the other way around. I'm not sure why would they say that he cannot. I'm not sure. I mean, if you make the blessing on a piece of cake, does not cover your coffee. So you would need to make the blessing on the coffee. I'm not sure why Mishnah Berurah says, maybe he's going to explain. He said make on a coffee and then on a cake. Let's see. However, it is preferable to make the blessing over the cake or biscuit, okay, by itself beforehand. Okay, exactly. Without soaking it. Exactly. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, so as we explained with our donut example. So he makes the blessing on a cake, right? Borei minei mizonos, eat a little cake, make the blessing over the coffee, drinks a little coffee, and then he wants to combine deep this was a cake into the coffee. There is no problem because he already made all the necessary blessings. I mean, everything is covered. Okay, 1 second. Where were we? Okay, so one more time the sentence and a few commentaries on this sentence. So there is a commentary on a commentary. However, it is preferable to make the blessing over the cake or biscuit by itself beforehand without soaking it. Okay, commentary. Since the blessing Borei minei mizonos has a precedence over the blessing Shechakol. Exactly. I mean, I was a little surprised. Why would he say differently? Shechakol, and should be made beforehand. Okay. So Baruch Hashem, that's what we figure out. Okay. Then then to make the blessing Shechakol over the bit of sugar. First, to serve also for the coffee. Let's see. So commentary about the piece of sugar. Since once one make the blessing over the cake or a biscuit, it may no longer be able to make the blessing over the coffee, as it may be regarded as secondary to the cake or a biscuit. Okay. In such a case, although one both eats the cake or a biscuit and drinks coffee separately first. Okay, I'm not sure why would they say secondary. I mean, it would be secondary maybe, right? In the case as we said before, that's I think the answer when he wants to only dip this cake in the water, in a coffee, and he does not. And whatever left of the coffee, he's not going to drink it. Maybe this is an example that they meant. Then it's 100% secondary. But if he likes coffee, he drinks. He dips these cakes in the coffee and sometimes sips a little coffee also. So in this case, there are two separate things. Of course, you need to make two separate blessings. So one more time to conclude, we say first Borei minei mizonos and then on the coffee, and then you do whatever you want. You want to combine, you can combine. Continue. However, it seems reasonable to assume that what he says only refers to the bits or pieces of bread which are not as large as the olive. Okay, so what does it mean? 66 commentary. For if the pieces of bread as large as olive, it is clear stated above in paragraph 10 that one should make hamotzi over it, even though it is no longer appearance of the bread. So okay. So we say if he wants to dip this piece of bread. So Mishnah Berurah started talking about the cakes, right? But Shulchan Aruch was actually talking about the bread. I mean, maybe cake for us is I think it's more popular example than more common circumstances, I would say, right? Than dipping the bread. Right, so but Mishnah Berurah says clearly if these pieces of bread are larger than kizai, so it's always hamotzi, even they don't look like bread. Okay, so let me check time. 1 second. Let me see. 1 second. Let's see how long. Okay, let's at least start. Let's start. Okay, so the whole halacha number 13. Although a dough products prepared from a stiff mixture, there is of flour needed with water. So stiff mixture, flour mixed with water. Okay. If it was cooked by boiling or frying, one should not make blessing of hamotzi over it. Okay. This rule applies even though it has the appearance of the bread. So if it was boiled, okay. So we'll see, okay. And even when it is liable for the separation of challah, we're going to see what is the connection. It's not clear. Since the requirements to make the blessing hamotzi of the dough products is only dependent on the time of baking. Time of baking. So basically, what they're saying before we go to the commentary, so it could be the same dough, right? Like initial dough, right? And from one piece, let's say she carried in two batches. From one she's going to make, let's say, I don't know what, bread, and to others she's going to add some other ingredients, and she's going to bake some other things. So basically the dough is the same, or even makes homemade pasta, let's say, right? So maybe she's going to add eggs to the same formula and make pasta, right? So in this case, still we must separate challah, right? We can combine these two pieces to separate challah. Okay. Continue. There are authorities who dispute this and maintain that whenever a dough was originally stiff, one makes the blessing of hamotzi. So meaning if it was made with the water, right? Mixed with water. Interesting. Of hamotzi over the prepared product, even if one softened the dough with water subsequently. And converted it into sufganim. There is a dough product kneaded into the sponge-like form, by boiling the dough in water or frying it in oil. Okay. It is a practice to be lenient. Right? We don't call it bread. A person who fears heaven should act in a way that satisfies both opinions, and should not eat the stiff dough which was boiled or fried unless he makes blessing over the bread first. So basically, all these donuts, right? That's the good candidate, right, for what Shulchan Aruch is saying. So, and that's the explanation. God-fearing people would do it only in a bread meal. So they're not going to do it as and they're not going to eat these donuts as a simple as a snack, right? Besides the fact that it's not healthy, very not healthy, but that's a different point. Okay, continue. Gloss. All of this only applies if after the baking it has the appearance of the bread. But donuts, they do appear as the bread. But if the resulting product does not have appearance of the bread, as in the case of the noodles, called varum zalich. Okay, it's probably in Yiddish, I think. Then, according to all authorities, one should not make over it the blessing of hamotzi or the three blessings, right? 1 second. One should not make over them the blessing of hamotzi or the three blessings. Okay, why? For after the meal. Since it is not classed as bread. No. They say three. It's not three. It's the blessing after the meal. That's I think that they misspelled it. In such a case. So basically, we decide that it is misogynist. However, stuffed bread and stuffed dumplings, so that's for sure misogynist, are classed as having appearance as a bread, and consequently, one should not eat them unless he makes the blessing of hamotzi over the bread first. Okay. In addition, all this only applies if the dough did not contain oil or honey, etc., but was merely fried in them. But if the dough was actually kneaded with oil or honey, the ruling that then applies has already been given in a paragraph dealing with the snack bread. So it's oil and honey. As we said before, make it snack, and it's misogynist. Okay, I think we can stop here. That's too much of technical information. Right, so we stop here. We covered a lot, Baruch HaShem. So next time we continue. It's very interesting. All right, any questions? Any topic? Or we stop here? Okay. All right, then good night, good Shabbos until next week, next Monday, B'ezrat Hashem. Thank you. Good night.